Welcome back to the channel. I'm Jason.
And I'm TC. Here we are on the 48th parallel, and it's winter.
Yeah, we're trying to get these done a little early so we don't get shut out by the darkness. Like and subscribe. Hit the bell. Please help with that, and we'll say that again at the end. But if you're sitting here watching us right now, you can do it right now really quick, and then it'll be done.
And thank you.
And thank you so much.
Jason pointed out something that we've been putting links and stuff into our videos after in the show notes, but apparently they're not clickable because we don't have 1,000?
Yeah, like 1,000 followers. So, bringing the channel along helps us put information in the description that makes it easier for you to know what we're looking at.
And we're doing this on the cheap.
For sure.
It's a cell phone. We're sitting in a car. We're not going to spend money with
it's
YouTube in order to promote our own stuff. So
yeah, it's not about a fancy set. It's about it's about us getting the message out. So anyway, this week's recap, we're not going to just talk about last week. This channel, we were talking about it today at lunch. This channel has really been a journey for us. It has kind of forced us to dive into a lot of history and a lot of research. And, if you go way back to the beginning, we did episodes about the history of representation. We did episodes about freedom, the difference between freedom and liberty, that sometimes we use words interchangeably when they don't exactly mean the same thing. We talked about the Declaration, which we're going to talk about in a minute. We did 3 different episodes on corruption of the government, corruption of media, and corruption of capitalism, and corruption of our thinking. We talked about the American power, how it's generated, the pillars of our strength, and that it's generated organically, and that it's very seductive, that we send these people to Washington to wield our power.
Bottom line there is that wealth of the United States is generated by us.
That's right. Not just the wealth, the ingenuity. We gravitate towards the wealth because often that's what we see. But it's not just the wealth. It's the ingenuity. Penicillin was made here. It was discovered somewhere else, but it was made here.
Well, Marconi wasn't able to do his radio stuff in Italy. He had to come to the United States.
Yeah. We don't do kings. We don't do saviors.
Same thing with Tesla.
We talked about the myths of capitalism and how the collaboration of our wealthy class and our employees in Washington is just getting a little too handy. They're a little too comfortable with each other. That kind of leads us to where we're at. I mean, we did all this discussion and figured out that while the origins of this channel was about becoming a multi-party system, we found out that it's kind of a sister issue with the Convention of the States. Those two things are kin because they're both driven by the people and by state governments, and it's disconnected from federal representation. Last week, we gave you a clear rundown of the Convention of States organization that is putting forth a petition to try and get a Convention of the States. We gave you a rundown of the states that have already passed legislation. And we talked about the importance of guidance. The Declaration of Independence, before we get into this, there's a section in there that I'm not going to try and quote because it's too thick and heavy-handed, but I'll just try and paraphrase a little bit. It talks about prudence would keep you from altering a government long established, but over decades and generations of usurpations of power and swinging the pendulum back and forth and stirring the distrust of the people, it's not only our right, it's our responsibility to abolish those things that are hindering the people's rights and giving the government too much authority and fix those things. And I believe that passage in the Declaration is the very spirit of Article 5. I think that's why they wrote Article 5 in. They gave us a mechanism. They gave us a way to have revolution without blood.
And that was directly influenced by the states, because the state constitutions had it in there, and there were a lot of states that were not going to ratify it unless there was a mechanism included.
I'm a personal believer that a large agenda in this situation is important, and it's important for 3 reasons in my mind. Number one, clearly this is something that's very difficult to make happen. It's only happened once, and the very threatening of it seems to make people shake in their boots. This is a hard thing to accomplish, and if we end up doing this and getting these people in the room, we need to make the most of that time. We can't allow them the opportunity to go up there or mill around and not get much accomplished, and then God only knows it'd be another 200 and something years.
It's just another cocktail party.
Yeah, a large agenda ensures that we get the most accomplished that we can while we have these people in the room. Number two, a large agenda keeps the federal government from stepping in and just fixing something with a single amendment like they did in the early 1900s. They only had the one agenda, which was voting for the senators, and there was no need for a constitution because that could be fixed by a single amendment.
Convention.
Excuse me, there was no need for a convention because that issue could be fixed with a single amendment. A large agenda prevents the federal government from stepping in and nixing the whole idea. And then the third thing is guidance. We don't want to send these people in a room with no agenda, with no guidance. Lord knows, you leave them up to their own devices, anything could get brought up. A large agenda keeps them focused. It keeps all of their time that maybe they don't even get to all of it. That's the point, that it keeps them focused while they are there. So,
by the way, that's metaphorical, right?
Yeah.
Because with today's communications, each state could have their own. Here's the agenda, here are the questions, and each state can gather wherever they're going to gather and discuss this stuff, because each state gets one vote, then the majority of people. So maybe it's the state houses that sit down and discuss all of this stuff because they're all elected officials. They're representing us. And then sending that vote to the Constitution, the convention.
The chosen delegates to discuss.
Yes.
I guess is what you're saying, that the states could come up with what they feel like is important in the agenda. Look, these movements, Convention of States, they have an agenda. We talked about it last week. It's term limits, it's fiscal restraints, it's limiting the power of the government. That's pretty vague, and it's only 3 things. Maybe they feel like they need to keep it simple in order for people to understand it and make a constitutional convention happen. I could see that being a strategic move. There are other movements that also have 1 or 2 issue agendas. We talked last week about getting the conversation out there and trying to come up with mock guidance and the things that we, the American people, think are important. And we said we were going to talk about the judiciary. So, before we do it, let me just say, remember, we aren't running for anything. We're not pundits. We're just a couple of guys.
This is a hobby.
Trying to spark a conversation among you folks. So here we go. The judiciary, in the same vein of the early 1900s, when people became dissatisfied with senators being appointed by state legislatures, they saw corruption in it. They suspected corruption in it. And it took them 20 years, but they finally got an amendment saying, we no longer want senators to be appointed. We want to vote for them. In that same vein, I ask you, do we have 3 equal branches of government? Why do we not vote for anyone in the judiciary at the federal level?
The original idea was that if you had these guys that had to run for office, then they would have to worry about their political situation in order to be reelected. But every state Supreme Court, or whatever they call their superior court, is an elected position. And why do we not do that at the federal level?
And maybe that worked what they originally intended in the beginning. Maybe that worked in the beginning. But our country has grown, and the way we want to be represented has evolved. And, let's just take a look at the problems that we see with the judiciary. We're now seeing a judiciary that is reluctant to rule, because if the executive has so much power, if the executive says, no, I'm not doing that, then they don't have any teeth. And then it automatically delegitimizes their equality in the three branches of government. And so now they're reluctant because they have no teeth.
The only people that can do anything with the justice is the Congress. They can impeach them. That's the only way to get rid of them, that or death. And again, it's the whole high crimes and misdemeanors. It's the same thing with an out of control executive. How do you get rid of them? Well, you got to impeach them and convict them. This is so rare. And so we've got justices that are lifetime appointments. Okay, we don't have to change that, but they don't have to be sitting on the Supreme Court for a lifetime. They could be term limited.
Certainly they should be.
Maybe an 18-year, maybe a 10-year. Maybe they have to come, like any kind of promotion system in the military, you have to have time and rank before you can be promoted to the next rank. Maybe the first rung of being a federal judge is to be at the district level, and you have to be there for between 2 and 5 years, whatever the number's going to be. And then you have to be at the appellate court. And then you have to be there for a minimum amount of, let's say, 2 to 5 years, whatever the number's going to be. And then you could be elected to the Supreme Court. But if it's term limited, then that means they go back down to the appellate level after somebody from the appellate level is promoted up to the Supreme Court.
Or retire. Let's look at another problem we're having with the judiciary. I think most of us would agree, and we've said it on this channel, that we have a two-tier system. We have a real problem with political crime and white-collar crime not being prosecuted. And this is one of the things that's connected to the pitfalls of the two-party system. Neither party is really interested in prosecuting any political crime because they know eventually the other side's going to be in power. Look at what Biden's DOJ, it took them forever. If it had not been for a bipartisan commission putting pressure, two brave Republicans, whatever you think about Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, two brave Republicans to put their money where their mouth is in a time when they were under a lot of pressure, helped to create a bipartisan commission that had to put pressure on the DOJ. They weren't going to prosecute any of that. They started at the bottom. They started with the low-hanging fruit, the people that were easy to get to. And what did that do? All it did was set up a situation where that president could be reelected and pardon all of them. This is a real problem with the judiciary.
This is part of the problem of the two-party system because it's a mutual protection pact.
These things are linked together.
If one party's in power and they do something, well, the next time the other one's in power, there could be retaliation. Subsequently, they don't do anything. I watched a video the other day that said Marjorie Taylor Greene earned about $24 million in a 5-year term, 5 years in the Congress. How the hell did she do that? Well, there are laws against what looks like insider trading, but is it ever going to be prosecuted? No, because Nancy Pelosi does the same thing. She's worth 54% more this year than she was last year. Yeah. How the hell do you do that?
Yeah, if we're going to point the finger at Marge, we have to look at the Queen, which is, Nancy Pelosi's been putting up Bernie Madoff numbers for, a decade at least. So here,
it's a pyramid scheme.
Yeah. So Here's the guidance that we're suggesting. We believe that the Chief Justice should be an elected person, that position should now be a political position, perhaps a 10-year term, a single 10-year term, so no opportunity to get reelected, and move the DOJ from the purview of the president over to the purview of the Chief Justice.
The DOJ was created in 1870 by an act of Congress. There's no reason that Congress couldn't do the same thing right now, except that they probably won't because they're lazy fucks. Too much power has been concentrated in the executive branch. So if we were to move the DOJ over to work for the Chief Justice, who is now an elected official, that person then appoints the Attorney General, and the Attorney General still has to get advice and consent from the Senate, just like it is now. The U.S. Marshal Service, which primarily does stuff for the courts, would then move from...
Was created for the courts, was it not?
Yeah.
Yeah, originally.
Would go work under the courts. And now you've got some teeth that could actually go out and arrest if they need to. Right now, Marshal Service is under the DOJ, under the president.
As is the FBI, as is the military, as is Secret Service, intelligence service. Prison. It's too much. The pardon power, it's too much. It's just too much power in one place. And, we could elect the Chief Justice to do this very thing. The Chief Justice could appoint the federal bench. The president could still appoint the justices. There could be some connective tissue there. But, we can move these things, manage them. We've talked about management on this channel a bunch of times, that management makes a difference, and we could manage this a different way if we wanted to. Mm-hmm. And offer a better opportunity for these white collar crimes to be prosecuted. If there's a fear that these people could be prosecuted, the chances are they would sharpen their pencil on the choices that they decide to make. What else do we have in there?
Talked about moving DOJ. We talked about the federal marshals being moved along with them.
So
FBI would stay under the executive branch under Homeland Security, because they do have a pretty large terrorist or anti-terrorism function. U.S. Marshals, on the other hand, federal courts is what they're focused on protecting, just like the Secret Service is doing the president, and the Secret Service does stuff with the Department of Treasury. Marshals are usually working in the courts. They're the ones that are doing they can have investigative capabilities, et cetera, et cetera. So if the DOJ is moved to the courts and the marshals go with them, that could be the arm that functions as part of the investigation service.
I could see expanding the court to one justice per circuit.
And there are 11 circuits.
And then, writing legislation around the idea that if you want to expand the court, you have to expand the number of circuits, so we can kind of get rid of this. That's a representational math issue, not a philosophical one, and that's just better representation for us. And we just remove this idea that somebody's going to expand the court. Well, they'd have to do a lot of work to do that, We think that's a possibility of limiting the authority of government. Remember, we're talking about the Constitution. What does the Constitution do? It limits the authority of government, offers rights to citizenry. The bottom line is, if the executive is going to be responsible for executing the laws of the land, then the Chief Justice should be responsible for properly prosecuting the laws of the land. At least that's the way I feel about it.
And if he's got the Marshal Service in order to do that, then it could be done. And if the Attorney General is working for the Chief Justice, all the tools are there.
We could make the pardon power a two eyes situation where the president could suggest it, but the Chief Justice has to review it and okay it.
Well, and both of them have the capability. Both
Doing
have
either
to
way.
agree.
Right. Yeah. We get more of what we want when we agree. So we can, force them to agree. These are all suggestions. What, and this is just one issue, the judiciary. I mean, what are we going to talk about next week? The Article 2 powers of the presidency or human rights? What are we doing?
I think that's a good idea because too much power has been concentrated in the executive. And a lot of it has to do with zombie laws that the Congress has failed to remove.
All of that.
There's stuff been sitting there for a long, long time. Lena Khan was talking about, there were all these roadblocks put in place when she went to the Federal Trade Commission. She found out that most of those were created by the corporations that wanted the roadblocks in place, which inhibits innovation because there's always these things in the way to inhibit it. And meanwhile, it was the corporations that put it there. She realized, along with her staff, that there's no federal reason that this is here, and they started chucking it out. Anyway,
if you guys made it this far, I'm gonna say it again. Please share this media. Give us a like. Give us a share. Share it with some younger people than us because it's future rights.
Hey, I'm 25.
It's future rights we're trying to protect. I mean, leave it in the comments. What do you think? Tell us what you think. And then next week, we'll get into Article 2, I guess.
We got an interesting comment, which was, you guys are nuts. There's already procedures in place for the Constitutional Convention.
Please tell us.
Whoever that guy was, please tell us how.
Tell us. We're looking into this on a reasonably regular basis. Tell us what you think.
I appreciate it.
All right. We'll see you guys next week.